If you've ever looked back at a toxic relationship and asked yourself, how did I not see that? How did I let this happen? What was wrong with me? By the end of this video, you are never going to ask yourself those questions in the same way again. What happened to you has a name. It has a process. It was not random, and it was absolutely not your fault. It's called grooming. And no, grooming is not just something that happens to children. Almost every expert, every study, every conversation about grooming treats it like a child protection issue. And yes, it is that. But what nobody is talking about is how grooming happens to adults every single day in all different kinds of relationships with people who are smart, aware, educated, and emotionally intelligent. And the shame of being an adult who didn't see it coming, that shame is one of the most isolating parts of the whole experience because you're supposed to know better, right? No, you weren't supposed to know better. You were up against something specifically designed to be invisible. And something the majority of our society refused to even admit exists. And I'm going to show you exactly how this works. The beginning was designed to feel like the best thing you've ever experienced. Nobody knowingly walks into a toxic relationship. Nobody meets someone and thinks, you know what? Yeah, this is the person who's going to hurt me. This is the dynamic that I'm choosing. No, you walked into what felt like the best thing that had ever happened to you. Maybe it was the most seen you'd ever felt, the most understood, the most cherished, the most special. That's where it starts. Not with something that makes you want to leave, with something that makes you never want to leave. And that's exactly the point. It starts with feeling completely, finally, deeply seen and understood. They studied you, your values, your wounds, your dreams, your language, what you'd been missing, what kind of connection you'd been searching for. And then they became it, not partially, completely. This goes way beyond what people call love bombing. This wasn't just someone being really into you and over the top with gifts and affection. This was a precise, deliberate construction of the exact relationship you always needed, built specifically for you, using everything you revealed about yourself. And here's the thing, you didn't fall in love with them, you fell in love with yourself, the most seen version of yourself, the most understood version, the version that finally felt cherished and chosen. Groomers don't show you who they are. They show you who you are reflected back perfectly. Your values, your depth, your capacity for love, your compassion, all of it mirrored back so accurately that it felt like fate. That's why it can feel like a soulmate connection. That's why it can feel like nothing you've ever experienced before. And that's why losing them can feel like losing a part of yourself because they were the mirror that made you feel so seen. When they left, the reflection disappeared. But here's what's true. You were never the mirror. You were always the person standing in front of it. You still exist. Fully. Every part of you that felt so seen, that was always you. They just showed it to you, and then they took the mirror away. This is how toxic relationships pull you in so slowly, not through force, not through fear, through the most powerful thing that a human being can experience, the feeling of finally being deeply seen and deeply understood. Your instincts were working. You were given reasons to override them. How many times have you said to yourself, how did I not see it sooner? How could I have stayed for so long? How could I have been so stupid? I want you to stop right there if you're saying any of those things, because that story is completely false. You were not stupid. You were not blind. You were not missing something that everyone else could see. You actually knew. You always knew. There was that quiet unease, that small voice in the middle of the night speaking to you, that split second of, wait, something doesn't sit right with me. That feeling in your body before your brain could even form the words. That is what I call your internal red flag radar, and it was working perfectly. Your instincts were never broken. They were firing the entire time. So why didn't you listen to them? Well, you have an extraordinary capacity to look inward, to take responsibility, to ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? How can I be better? Maybe this is my fault. That is not a weakness. That is one of the highest qualities a human being can have. And it was used against you deliberately. Because here's what they were doing while you were looking inward and questioning yourself. Nothing. They weren't asking themselves what they did wrong. They weren't losing sleep over whether they'd hurt you. They weren't questioning themselves at all. You were the one doing all of the self-reflection for both of you. And while you were busy doing that, they were watching your radar go off and handing you a reason to dismiss it. Every time your gut said that something is wrong here, they made sure something happened that made you question the signal instead of the person sending it. They did something kind. They said the exact right thing. They pulled you close at the precise moment you were about to pull away. They made you feel like your doubt was the problem, like your inability to just trust them was what was damaging the relationship. Every red flag your instincts raised, they handed you a reason to lower it. And every single time you overrode your radar, you got rewarded with warmth, closeness, with versions of them you fell in love with. So your brain learned exactly the lesson that they were teaching. Trust them. Don't trust yourself. So this wasn't a failure of your intuition. This was a deliberate hijacking of your greatest strength. Your willingness to honestly look at yourself and turning it into the very thing that kept you stuck. Because you assumed that they were doing the same thing that you were doing. That's what people with integrity do. When something is wrong, they look inward. They ask the hard questions about themselves. They take responsibility. They try to learn and grow. You just assumed that they were doing exactly that, but they weren't. You were doing the inner work for both of you, while they were simply waiting for you to come back and tell them that you'd figure out what you had done wrong. And because it genuinely never occurred to you that someone could be in a relationship and feel zero responsibility for what was happening, you kept looking inward. You kept trying to find those things to fix. You kept believing that if you just understood it better, communicated it better, or loved better, it would finally work. That's not stupidity. That's what it looks like when one person has a conscience and the other one doesn't. You didn't miss the red flags. You were systematically taught that seeing them made you the problem. Your feelings were completely real. The foundation they were built on wasn't. So many people come out of this feeling foolish for loving so deeply, like they were naive, like they should have known better. Your feelings, however, were never the problem. When someone mirrors your values, meets your deepest needs, and creates that feeling of safety and connection, your brain releases the exact same chemicals as true, genuine love. That oxytocin, dopamine, attachment hormones, not similar chemicals, the exact same ones. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between manufactured intimacy and genuine love. Nobody's can. It responds to what's being shown, and what it was being shown was designed specifically to trigger the deepest possible attachment response. You weren't fooled because you were naive. Your biology was targeted. The love you felt was real. The attachment was real. The pain of losing it was real. None of that was in your head. The only thing that wasn't real was them. They showed you a person that didn't exist, and you loved that person with everything you had. Of course you did. That person was designed specifically to be loved by you. That's not foolishness. That's being lied to by someone who studied you first. Your heart wasn't broken because you loved wrongly. It was broken because you loved genuinely, and the person you loved was never really there. By the time you knew something was wrong, it was already too late to see it coming. Most people think grooming is the whole relationship, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the control, the hot and cold. They think that is the grooming, but it's not. By the time any of that started, the grooming was already complete. By the time the confusion began, the mixed signals, the moments that made you doubt yourself, you were already bonded, already deeply attached, already reorganized around their presence. The grooming was the setup. Everything that came after was simply the maintenance of what had already been built. And the most powerful maintenance tool that they had? Confusion. Here's what every expert misses. Confusion in these relationships is not a side effect. Confusion is the strategy. A person who is very clear leaves. A person who is confused stays. And not only stays, but can try harder, can investigate more, can give more chances, the benefit of the doubt. Every mixed signal kept you searching for answers instead of walking out the door. Every almost but not quite apology kept you hoping instead of leaving. Every moment of warmth after coldness kept you craving the next moment of safety. You weren't confused because the relationship was complicated. You were confused because your confusion was keeping you exactly where they needed you. If this is landing right now, if something is finally making sense that you've been trying to understand for months or years, understanding what happened is just the beginning, but it's not the whole thing. Because even when most people can name the grooming, they can still feel completely stuck. They still can't stop thinking about it. They still can't fully trust themselves again. That's because grooming doesn't just affect the relationship, it affects your relationship with yourself, your ability to trust your own perception, your ability to feel safe in your own body, your ability to know what's real. Information alone doesn't rebuild that. There's a specific process, a specific order that allows you to come back to yourself fully, to trust yourself again, to finally feel free in a way that actually lasts. And that's exactly what my free Relationship Clarity Masterclass walks you through. It's my life's work in 60 minutes for free. The link is in the description below. And subscribe because the next video goes one layer deeper. Now that you understand how you got pulled in, the next question is, why did it make you doubt yourself so completely? Why did your own mind start to feel like the enemy? The answer is the most validating thing I've ever said to anyone who has been through this. So I'll see you in that next video.